I used to believe that if you gave enough love, life would give it back. That's what my mama told me when I was 23 and walked down the aisle in a white satin dress that couldn't hide how wide my hips already were. Love him right, she said, and he'll never leave home hungry. I took that to heart. For 27 years, I cooked, cleaned, prayed, forgave, and smiled like a woman who had it all. But behind that smile was a woman slowly disappearing. My name is Denise, 49 years old, mother of 3, wife, at least on paper. I used to wake up every morning before sunrise, pack my husband's lunch, and iron his shirts so crisp he could walk into any boardroom and look like success itself. He was the kind of man people called charming, the kind of man who could make a waitress blush with a single compliment, then come home smelling like another woman's perfume and tell me I was imagining things. At first, I believed him, because believing him meant I could stay the woman I promised to be, loyal, patient, and forgiving. 15 years. That's how long he was seeing her. 15 damn years under my nose. A whole other life, while I was busy holding together the one he kept breaking. It started with whispers, credit card charges I didn't recognize, late nights that turned into business trips, and a new cologne I never bought. But I kept quiet, because I was raised to believe that good wives pray instead of question, that strong women carry their families even when their backs crack under the weight. Until one night, God decided I'd carried enough. It was raining hard, thunder so loud it shook the windows. He came home late, again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still in my robe, coffee cold, phone screen lit with a message I wasn't supposed to see. Her name was T. Just that, a single letter. But the words under it changed everything. I miss you already, baby. I wish it was me you were coming home to. I stared at that text for a long time, like it might erase itself if I blinked hard enough. When he walked in, dripping wet and smelling of whiskey, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him and asked, "Who's T?" He froze, just for a second. But that second told me everything. You know how they say when your heart breaks, you feel it in your chest? That's a lie. You feel it in your stomach, deep and heavy, like something's rotting inside you. I stood there watching him lie again, telling me she was just a coworker, that I was paranoid. And I smiled through the ache, because the truth is, I didn't need him to confess. His silence was enough. For weeks after that, I played dumb, watched him sneak around like a teenager, let him think he was clever. But inside me, something new was growing, a kind of quiet rage that tasted like iron and burnt sugar, the kind that makes you see things clearly. I realized I'd built my whole life around a man who saw me as furniture, useful but invisible. And when I started asking questions about our savings, about the house, about the business we'd built together, he changed. No more fake smiles, no more gentle lies, just cold eyes and colder words. He said I'd never understand money, that I should let him handle things. Then one morning, I woke up to find that the joint account we shared was empty. Every dollar gone. That's when I knew. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. Because when a man like him decides he's done with you, he doesn't just walk away. He makes sure you've got nothing left to stand on. And that's exactly what he tried to do. When people talk about marriage, they never mention how it eats time, how days turn into decades before you even notice your reflection changing. When I married him, I was 23 and full of noise, laughter, dreams, plans. I wanted to travel, to finish school, to open my own bakery. But life doesn't always care about what you want. It cares about what you give. And I gave everything. He was ambitious, charming, the kind of man who could sell rain to the desert. When we met, I thought his confidence would protect me. Turns out, it only protected him. I quit my job 6 months after the wedding because he said, "You don't need to work, baby. I'll take care of you." Those words sounded sweet back then, like love. Now I know they were the first bricks in the cage he was building. At first, it felt like we were building something together. He'd talk about his dreams, the business he wanted to start, the house we'd buy, the life we'd live. And I believed him, every word. I stayed up late helping him with paperwork, cooking meals while he worked through the night, and praying over our bills when money ran short. When he finally opened his own company, a small logistics firm, I was the one behind the scenes. I answered calls, did invoices, managed clients when he was too busy meeting investors. He'd smile and call me his secret weapon. I wore that title like a badge of honor, never realizing he was taking credit for every bit of work I did. The first few years were rough. We struggled to pay rent, and sometimes I'd pawn my jewelry just to keep the lights on. But when the money started coming in, he changed. Not all at once, just little things at first. The way he stopped asking for my opinion, the way he corrected me in front of people, the way he laughed when I talked about going back to school. "What for?" he'd say. "We got everything we need." Except I didn't. I needed myself, and I was disappearing one compromise at a time. By the time we had our second child, I was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. He was climbing ladders, meeting clients in expensive restaurants, buying new suits. I was at home, making casseroles and sewing Halloween costumes. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Her body softer, her smile quieter. I told myself this was love, that real love meant sacrifice, that my happiness could wait until the kids were grown, until the house was paid off, until we made it. But that day never came. He started spending more time away, first claiming business trips, then conferences, then late-night emergencies. I'd wait up, watching headlights crawl across the window, pretending I didn't know. Every time I asked where he'd been, he'd pull me close, whisper something sweet, and make me feel small for even asking. "Don't start with your insecurities, Denise," he'd say. "I'm out here working for this family." And maybe that was the cruelest part, how he made me doubt myself, how he used love like a leash. I remember one Christmas when he surprised me with a car, a shiny silver SUV with a red bow on top. The kids screamed with joy and I cried, thinking he still cared. But what I didn't know was that the car was leased in his company's name, not mine. Nothing ever was. Not the house, not the accounts, not even the business I helped him build from nothing. He called it protection, said it was simpler for taxes. I called it trust. Now I call it theft. I was building a kingdom, and I didn't even own a brick. Looking back, I can see every warning sign. Every time he made a decision without me. Every time he reminded me who paid the bills. But when you love someone that deep, you start mistaking control for care. You start believing the lie that if you just love harder, things will get better. But love doesn't fix what's rotten. It just hides the smell. It's strange how truth doesn't always explode into your life like a bomb. Sometimes it seeps in through the cracks, slow, quiet, poisonous. After I saw that message from T, I became someone else. On the outside, I kept my same routines. I packed his lunch, ironed his shirts, kept the house smelling like lemon and love. But inside, I was studying him. Every word, every glance, every late-night shower that washed away someone else's perfume. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his witness. He thought I didn't know. That's the funny thing about men like him. They confuse silence for stupidity. He had no idea I was checking receipts, phone bills, credit card statements. I even started calling the hotels he claimed were business trips. The receptionist at one said, "Oh yes, Mr. Thomas stays here often," with his wife. His wife, not me. That night I sat in the dark of our bedroom, phone in hand, scrolling through years of lies I didn't know I'd lived through. Pictures from company parties where she was always there, in the corner, smiling just enough to blend in. Her name wasn't T, it was Tasha. 27 years old when they met, half his age. Worked for his company at the time. 15 years. 15 years of pretending. 15 years of my birthdays forgotten, anniversaries missed, family dinners cut short because work couldn't wait. It was her. Always her. The first time I saw her face up close was on Facebook. She had posted a photo at the same beach where he took me for our 10th anniversary. Same pier, same sunset, same stupid red cap he bought from a souvenir shop that day. He wasn't even trying to hide anymore. I could have gone crazy, but I didn't. I played his game, calm and quiet, because something in me knew the storm wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. A month later, I overheard him on the phone in his office. He didn't know I was standing outside the door. He was talking about moving assets, restructuring, finalizing paperwork. His voice was calm, businesslike, the way it always was when he was planning something. When I asked him about it later, he smiled that salesman smile of his and said, "Just boring legal stuff, baby. You wouldn't understand." That line, "you wouldn't understand," burned deeper than any insult, because I did understand. I understood enough to know he was moving our money, preparing for something. I just didn't know what. Until I did. A letter came in the mail one afternoon, addressed to him but marked urgent. I don't know what made me open it. Maybe the weight of it, maybe the universe pushing my hand. Inside was a notice from the bank. It mentioned the sale of our house, not a refinance, a sale. He was selling the house, the one we built from scratch, the one where our children took their first steps, and transferring the proceeds into a business account under his name only. My hands went numb. My knees almost gave out. I sat on the kitchen floor holding that letter, realizing that the man I'd built my life around was planning to erase me. That night, I waited for him to come home. He didn't. Again. I called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. Around midnight, I drove to his office. The lights were off, but his car wasn't there. I drove to the Marriott by the highway, the one he always used for meetings. And there they were. Through the glass doors, I saw him and Tasha sitting in the lounge, laughing over wine like two people who'd never had to bury a dream. Her hand rested on his knee. His face glowed in a way it hadn't in years, not since before he learned how to lie. I didn't go inside. I just stood there in the rain, watching them, feeling my world shrink to the size of that glass reflection. I saw myself, soaked, swollen, old, and I saw her, young, slim, glowing. A perfect mirror of everything he wanted and everything I wasn't anymore. That was the night I stopped crying for him. Something inside me hardened like steel pulled from fire. Over the next few weeks, I pretended not to know. I smiled when he came home late. I cooked his favorite meals, listened to his lies, and let him think he still had me under control.
Meanwhile, I was gathering every piece of paper, every document, every proof I could find. Bank records, property deeds, business contracts. I spent nights at the library teaching myself what he said I wouldn't understand. And that's when I found it, a draft of a new will. Dated just 2 months earlier. It left everything. The company, the house, the savings, to Tasha. Nothing to me. Nothing to our kids. Nothing. That's when I understood the depth of his cruelty. He wasn't just leaving me for her. He was trying to erase my life's work. Every meal, every prayer, every night I stayed awake while he chased someone else. He thought I'd go quietly, that I'd sign whatever papers he handed me and fade into the background like an old photograph. But he forgot one thing. I may have been silent, but I wasn't weak. One morning, I walked into his office unannounced. He looked up, startled, mid-conversation with his lawyer. "Denise," he said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I set a folder on his desk. Inside were copies of every document he'd tried to hide, every lie, every signature, every cent he moved without my consent. "You forgot who helped you build this," I said. He tried to laugh it off, but I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He said, "You're overreacting, baby. You don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. "I know exactly what I'm talking about.
And so will the judge. He didn't speak for a moment, just stared. Then he said the one thing that finally killed whatever love I had left for him. You should have stayed in your lane. That's when I realized he never saw me as a wife. I was a tool, a helper, a body to cook his meals, raise his kids, and keep his name clean. So I smiled. Maybe I did, I said. But now I'm building my own damn road. That night, I didn't wait for him to come home. I packed a bag, grabbed my laptop, and went to my sister's place. It wasn't pride that drove me out. It was clarity. I finally understood what kind of man he was and what kind of woman I needed to become to survive him. The morning after I left, I expected to wake up crying. I didn't. The tears had already done their job. They'd washed out the woman I used to be. What was left was quiet, steady, almost dangerous. I made coffee at my sister's house, opened my laptop, and started planning how to take my life back. I didn't have much, a few clothes, my old car, and a folder full of evidence. But I had something stronger than all of that. Truth. And truth, when you're finally ready to wield it, cuts deep. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Her name was Vanessa Carter, a woman with a voice that could slice through stone. I found her online at 2 a.m., reading reviews that said she was too aggressive, too emotional, too much, which meant she was perfect. When we met, she listened without interrupting, just nodded slowly while I told her everything: the affair, the money, the will. When I finished, she leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "He picked the wrong woman to underestimate." That was the first time in years someone made me feel seen. Vanessa explained how deep his manipulation went, how the accounts, the company, even the house were structured to make me disappear with nothing. "He's been planning this a long time," she said, "but we can fight back. The key is not to react. Let him think you're broken. Then we hit." And so I did. I went home that week, not to stay, but to collect what was mine. He was there, sitting at the kitchen table like a king who'd conquered his own castle. He looked up at me, smiled that fake little smile. "You finally done with your drama?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just walked past him, grabbed my files, my clothes, the photo albums he didn't deserve to keep. He watched me move around the room like I was some stranger invading his space. When I walked out, he said, "You'll regret this, Denise. You can't live without me." I stopped in the doorway and looked back. Watch me. That was the last time I looked at him as my husband. But he didn't stop there. No, men like him never do. He started a war, a slow, calculated one. First, he cut off my cards. Then he called our mutual friends and fed them lies, said I'd gone crazy, said I was paranoid and unstable. Some of them believed him. They always do. Charisma covers a multitude of sins. Then came the financial moves. He stopped paying the mortgage, hoping the house would default and leave me homeless. He changed the passwords to every account, closed credit lines, even filed for full control of the company, claiming I contributed nothing. But Vanessa was ready. We gathered every receipt, every email, every message that proved I'd worked for that company. Unpaid, unseen, but essential. She called it financial abuse, a term I'd never heard before. But once she said it, I couldn't unhear it. That's what it had always been, abuse dressed up as protection. When the court papers arrived, I read every word like scripture. He wanted divorce on his terms. No spousal support, no property split, no business shares. He even had the nerve to write that I was unfit to manage money because I lacked discipline. Discipline. That word made me laugh. Because I'd spent 27 years holding everything together while he tore it apart. But the worst blow came from our children. He'd gotten to them first. Told them I was angry, bitter, trying to take everything from him. My oldest son stopped answering my calls. My daughter said, "Mama, maybe you should just let him go." She didn't understand that he wasn't just leaving. He was trying to erase me from our story. There were nights I lay awake wondering if maybe he'd won already, if maybe the world really does favor the liars with good smiles. I'd see his pictures online, him and Tasha at charity events, smiling for cameras, dressed in matching suits. She'd taken my place in every way possible, even down to the way she wore her hair. But you can't copy a soul. I started rebuilding myself in small ways, cooking meals just for me, walking every morning, praying, not for him, but for peace. Some days I'd sit in the quiet and remind myself that survival was already a victory. Then, one afternoon, Vanessa called. "He moved the last of the funds into a new shell company," she said, "but he made a mistake. He used your name as a co-founder years ago. Legally, you're still tied to it." That mistake cracked everything open. We subpoenaed his records, his bank transfers, even his emails. Turned out, he'd been funneling money through fake accounts for almost a decade, hiding profits, evading taxes, rewriting ownership documents. The man who once told me I wouldn't understand money was about to be undone by the very woman he tried to erase. When his lawyer realized what we had, their tone changed fast. Suddenly they wanted to negotiate. He even called me himself one night, first time in months. "Denise," he said softly, "we don't have to do this. We can settle privately." I said, "You should have thought about private when you brought her into our bed." He sighed. "You've always been dramatic." "No," I said. "I've always been quiet. That's different." The court battle dragged on for months. He tried everything: intimidation, manipulation, even charm. But the mask was cracking. Underneath the smooth words was panic. The truth was coming out, piece by piece, and the world was finally seeing the man I'd lived with for 27 years. The liar, the thief, the coward. The day of the final hearing, I walked into that courtroom wearing a black dress. Not to mourn, but to bury the ghost of the woman who used to beg for love. He wouldn't look at me. His new wife sat in the back row, trying to hide behind oversized sunglasses. I didn't even glance her way. When the judge read the decision, it was like breathing after drowning. The court granted me half of the company, full rights to the house, and compensation for unpaid labor. Vanessa smiled, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "You did it." But I didn't feel joy right away. What I felt was release, like I'd been holding my breath for 27 years and finally exhaled. After court, he tried one last thing. Followed me to the parking lot, said, "You think you won? You'll still die alone, Denise." I turned, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, "Better alone than buried alive beside you." That was the moment I knew I'd never go back. That night, I went home, my home, and sat on the porch watching the sunset over the same yard I used to water while he was out cheating. The air smelled like rain, and for the first time in decades, I felt peace. Not happiness yet, that would take time. But peace is the soil where happiness grows. I realized then that love doesn't fail. People do. Love is sacred. What he did wasn't love. It was ownership disguised as care, and I finally broke the spell. I was free. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, like the morning after a long storm. You wake up, look around, and realize the house is still standing. And so are you. For months after the divorce, I lived in a kind of numb calm, the kind that follows destruction. I'd walk through the house he tried to take from me and run my fingers along the walls like I was touching a wound that finally healed. Some nights I'd still hear his voice, echoes of old fights, old lies, but they grew softer over time, like ghosts fading with the dawn. Money was tight at first. The settlement wasn't everything, and most of what I got was tied up in the business. But I had something far more valuable: my name, my reputation, and for the first time in years, my peace. At 49, I went back to school. Not for a degree, not for a title, for myself. I enrolled in a small business management program at the community college. The first day I sat in that classroom surrounded by students half my age, I felt ridiculous. My knees ached, my hands trembled, and I almost walked out. Then the professor said something that pinned me to my chair. "Rebuilding is an act of courage. Most people never do it." That sentence stayed with me. Week by week, I started piecing together the woman I'd left behind. I learned how to manage finances, how to read contracts, how to build credit in my own name. I even started helping other women in my class. Single mothers, divorcees, women like me who'd been told they were too old or too broken to start again. We formed a small group, called ourselves the Rebuilders. Every Thursday, we'd meet at a diner off Main Street, order sweet tea and pie, and share our progress. It wasn't therapy, it was survival wrapped in sisterhood. One of the women, Sharon, told me, "Denise, you got a fire in you. You could turn your story into something." At first, I laughed. Then she asked, "Didn't you say you used to bake?" And that's how it started. I began baking again. At first, just for the group, then for the church, then for small events. Cakes, pies, cookies, sweet things that came from the same hands that once wiped away tears. People started asking if I'd take orders. Then someone suggested I open a small bakery. So I did. I called it Second Slice, because that's what life had given me. Another chance to taste something good. The grand opening was nothing fancy. Just a few friends, some music, and a help wanted sign taped to the window. But when I saw that first customer walk in, when I heard the bell on the door ring, something inside me came alive again. For the first time in decades, I was building something that was mine. At first, business was slow. There were days when I'd make 10 cupcakes and sell 2. But I didn't stop. Every morning, I'd show up, turn on the lights, and fill that place with the smell of butter and sugar and fresh starts. And people came. Slowly, but they came. Because word spreads when your food carries truth. A few months in, my daughter stopped by. She hadn't talked to me much since the divorce. When she walked in, I froze. She looked just like me at her age. Same round cheeks, same cautious eyes. She said, "Dad told me you opened a bakery. I wanted to see it." For a second, I didn't know what to say. Then I handed her a cupcake. "It's on the house." She took a bite, smiled, and said, "It tastes like home." That's when I cried. Not the broken kind of tears, the healing kind. The kind that wash away shame and leave something tender behind. We talked for hours. About her job, her life, the years we lost. I didn't blame her for believing him. Manipulators don't just fool their wives, they fool everyone around them. But that night, when she hugged me before leaving, I knew the bridge between us wasn't gone. It was just waiting to be rebuilt. Word got around town about my story. The woman who took her cheating husband to court and came out stronger. Local papers wrote about it. A radio show even called. At first, I wanted to hide, but Vanessa told me, "Your silence helped him. Your story can help someone else." So I told it. I talked about financial abuse, about control disguised as love, about the cost of staying quiet. Women started visiting the bakery just to talk, not about pastries, but about pain. Some cried right there at the counter. I kept tissues by the register and never charged for coffee when someone needed to unload their heart. That little bakery became more than a business. It became a safe place, a sanctuary. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking at the door, half expecting him to walk in. He never did. But once, Tasha came. I recognized her right away, that same smooth skin, perfect hair, too much perfume. She stood there, nervous, holding her purse like it might protect her. She said, "I just wanted to see you. I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long time. I saw fear in her eyes, the same fear I'd carried for years, the fear of loving a man who only knows how to destroy. I said, "You don't owe me an apology. Just remember, what he did to me, he'll do to you, unless you leave before he does." She left without saying a word. 2 months later, I heard they'd separated. I didn't feel joy or revenge, just relief. The cycle was breaking, even if just a little. By the time my bakery hit its first anniversary, we were profitable. Not rich, but stable. I hired 2 single moms, both rebuilding their own lives. We laughed every morning like survivors who finally made it to shore. And one day, when I was closing up, my phone buzzed. A message from my oldest son. It said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I get it now. I love you." I sat in the dark bakery, phone in hand, and cried again. But this time, the tears didn't taste like loss. They tasted like victory. Freedom didn't come easy. It came through fire. But fire purifies too. It burns the lies, the weakness, the need for approval. What's left is solid, real, mine. And as I stood in the doorway that night, watching the streetlights glow on the rain-soaked pavement, I whispered to myself, I made it. Not rich, not perfect, but whole. They say healing isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about learning to live where the pain used to be. That's what I told myself when I started noticing the quiet again. The kind that used to scare me but now felt like peace. A year had passed since the divorce. The bakery was doing well. My body was stronger, my laughter came easier, and my nights were finally still. I didn't need anyone, and for the first time in my life, that sentence didn't sound lonely. It sounded holy. Then one afternoon, a man walked into my shop. His name was Marcus. Tall, dark-skinned, with a salt and pepper beard and hands that looked like they'd fixed things their whole life. He ordered a slice of pecan pie, sat by the window, and stayed long after his plate was empty. For weeks, he came in every Thursday around 3. Always ordered the same thing. Sometimes he'd bring flowers for the counter, said they reminded him of his late mother's kitchen. One day he asked, "You ever sit down, Miss Denise, or you just keep saving the world from hunger?" I laughed. It was the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from myself in years, unguarded, warm, real. He didn't flirt the way my ex did, with empty compliments and loud confidence. Marcus spoke softly, with pauses that left room for truth. When he asked questions, he listened to the answers. At first, I kept my distance. My heart was still learning the difference between love and control. I'd seen too much, given too much. So when he asked me out for coffee, I said no. Twice. Then one day, he came in with a small box. Inside was a business card that said, "Plumbing Services." He smiled and said, "No pressure, just in case your pipes ever need fixing." That made me laugh again, and this time, I said yes. We met at a diner, same one where my rebuilders group used to gather. I told him up front, "I'm not looking for someone to save me. I already did that." He nodded. "Good," he said. "I don't save people. I walk beside them." That was the moment I knew he was different. Our dates were simple. Walks in the park, picnics by the lake, church on Sundays. He never asked about my past unless I wanted to talk. When I did, he didn't judge. He just listened. Sometimes when I'd catch him looking at me, I'd ask, "What?" And he'd say, "You got light in you, Denise. Took a beating, but it's still shining." It took me months to let that light back out. I was still scared. Not of him, but of myself. Scared of losing boundaries, of shrinking again to make someone else comfortable. But Marcus never asked me to. He'd say, "If it costs your peace, it's too expensive." One evening, he came by the bakery after closing. I was wiping down the counter when he said, "I know what it's like, to be left behind." He told me his wife passed away 5 years earlier. Cancer. He'd spent 2 years taking care of her until the end. When she died, he said, "I thought I'd never smile again." But life's funny. It gives you back joy in pieces. That night, when he kissed me for the first time, it wasn't fireworks or butterflies. It was something steadier, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Still, part of me resisted. I'd built my independence brick by brick, and I wasn't about to hand it over. So I made a rule. No keys, no merging finances, no expectations. He respected every one of them. Once, he said, "You've built yourself so strong, Denise, you forgot it's okay to lean sometimes." And I told him, "I leaned for 27 years. Now I stand." He smiled. "Then I'll just stand beside you." That's how our love grew. Not from need, but from choice. He started helping at the bakery on weekends, fixing the broken door hinge, repairing the coffee machine, teasing the staff like a gentle uncle. Customers loved him. Sometimes people whispered, "That must be her man." And I'd blush like a teenager. But I didn't rush it. I wasn't chasing happy endings anymore. I was living them, one small moment at a time. One Sunday after church, he brought me to a little plot of land outside town. Just grass, an old oak tree, and a view of the sunset that took your breath away. He said, "Thought this might be a nice place for your next bakery. bigger, brighter. I looked at him, stunned. "Marcus, I can't afford this." He shrugged. "Didn't say you had to buy it today. Just wanted you to see what's possible." That night, I sat on my porch thinking about the word possible. For so long, I'd lived in survival. Now life was offering me something more. Peace, love, expansion. Still, part of me feared the old patterns. One morning, I woke up from a dream where my ex was standing in the bakery, telling me it was all going to fall apart. I woke in a sweat, heart racing, anger flooding back like acid. When I told Marcus about it, he said, "That's what healing does. It digs up old ghosts so they can finally leave." And I believed him. As the months passed, my heart softened. I started sleeping through the night again, humming while I baked, dancing in the kitchen when no one was looking. One evening, Marcus said something I'll never forget. We were sitting on the porch watching the sun go down, and he said, "You know, love isn't about finding someone new. It's about becoming someone who remembers they deserve it." That line hit me deep, because I finally did remember. I deserved it. Not because I'd suffered, but because I'd survived. When he asked if I'd let him take me on a trip, just a weekend getaway to the mountains, I hesitated. The old Denise would have said yes immediately, rearranged her schedule, asked for his approval. The new Denise looked him in the eyes and said, "If we go, it's because I want to, not because you need me to." He grinned. That's the only way I'd have it. We went. It was simple. A cabin, fresh air, no phones. One night we sat by the fire and he held my hand, tracing the lines on my skin like they were stories he wanted to memorize. He said, "You've lived 1,000 lives, haven't you?" And I said, "Just one. But I survived it 1,000 times." For the first time, love didn't feel like losing myself. It felt like coming home. It had been almost 2 years since I'd seen his face. Long enough to forget the sound of his footsteps. Long enough to stop flinching at shadows that looked like him. I thought the chapter was closed, until it wasn't. It was a Thursday morning, rain tapping on the bakery windows when he walked in. Just like that. Like time hadn't passed. Like he hadn't destroyed half my life and called it love. He looked older, thinner. The sharp lines of his jaw were softer now, his expensive suit slightly wrinkled. But his eyes, those same cold, calculating eyes, hadn't changed a bit. "Denise," he said, smiling like a politician, "you look good." I froze for a second. My employees stopped what they were doing. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. I forced a smile that never reached my eyes. "Can I help you?" He laughed, a low, fake laugh. "Always the businesswoman now, huh? I just wanted to see the place. Heard about it on the news." I said nothing. He looked around, nodding like he owned the walls. "Nice spot. Cozy. You really did it, huh? Without me." That last part was meant to sting. Once upon a time, it would have worked, but now his words just fell flat. I crossed my arms and said, "Without you is the only reason it worked." He smirked, but his eyes darkened. "You always did have a sharp tongue when you were angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "Just busy. So if you're here to buy something, the pies are on the left." For a second, I thought he might actually leave. But men like him never come for closure. They come for control. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "I heard you're seeing someone." So that was it. His ego couldn't stand the thought of me happy. I said, "You heard right." He nodded slowly, pretending to be calm, but his jaw tightened. "I see. You moved on quick." 2 years isn't quick," I said. "It's recovery." He gave a dry laugh. "Does he know what you're really like? The temper, the mood swings, the drama?" I stepped closer. "You mean the woman who held your company together, raised your kids, and cleaned your lies off the floor? Yeah, he knows her." He blinked. Just once. But I saw it. The hit landed. He straightened his tie. "You know, I thought about calling you. I've been going through some things. The company's struggling. Tasha left. Took a chunk of money when she did." There it was. Not remorse, not love, just another manipulation wrapped in a sad story. I said, "I'm sorry for your loss. Would you like a cupcake to go with it?" That made him snap. The mask cracked. "You think you're better than me now? You were nothing before I made you." The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. My employees looked at me, waiting. I wiped my hands on a towel and said quietly, "You didn't make me. You broke me. And I rebuilt myself without your permission." He sneered. "You think this little shop means something? You got lucky, Denise. You should be thanking me for giving you a story to tell." I laughed then, not out of humor but out of disbelief. "You really believe that, don't you? That my pain was your gift? That's the difference between us. I turn pain into purpose. You just spread it around like a disease." He took a step closer, but I didn't flinch. He wasn't bigger than me anymore. Not in body, not in spirit. "I could ruin you again," he said softly. "One call to the bank, one rumor, and this little fairy tale collapses." I tilted my head. "You already tried that. Didn't work then, won't work now." That's when Marcus appeared, out of the back room, wiping grease off his hands. He'd been fixing the sink. He didn't say a word, just stood next to me. His presence alone shifted the air. My ex's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. "So this is him," he said. "The plumber." Marcus smiled. "That's right. The plumber who fixes things instead of breaking them." My ex gave a fake laugh, but I could see the sweat forming near his hairline. He looked around one last time, muttered something about regretting nothing, and walked out. When the door shut, the bell rang softly. Just like the first day I opened, but this time, it sounded like freedom. Later that evening, I found myself sitting alone in the office. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only silence. I thought about the way he looked, smaller, weaker, desperate. The man who once controlled my world was just another lost soul now, wandering through the wreckage he built with his own hands. Marcus came in, set a cup of coffee beside me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I just thought I'd feel angrier." He smiled. "That's healing, baby. You don't owe him your anger anymore." And he was right. That night I stood in front of the mirror and stared at my reflection. The same woman, same skin, same scars, but new eyes. Eyes that no longer looked for permission. A few days later, I got a call from my lawyer, Vanessa. She said, "Guess who just filed for bankruptcy?" I didn't even smile, just said, "Karma always pays on time." But it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace. I sent my kids a message that night. No matter what happens, remember, love isn't about control. It's about freedom. My daughter replied with a heart emoji. My son called and said, "Mom, proud of you." Those 3 words meant more than any courtroom victory. That weekend, Marcus and I went back to that same diner where we first met. The waitress brought us sweet tea, smiled, and said, "Y'all look happy." Marcus looked at me and said, "You are happy, right?" I nodded. "I am. But not because of you. Because of me." He laughed. "That's my favorite kind of woman." When we left, I looked back at the diner's neon sign reflecting in the puddles on the street. For a moment, I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who waited by the window for a man who'd already left her long ago. She was gone now, but I whispered to her anyway, "You did good, girl. You made it out." And for the first time, I felt whole enough to forgive, not him, but myself. People think the hardest part about betrayal is the moment it happens. It's not. The hardest part is waking up the next morning and realizing the world kept going. The sun still rises, the bills still come, the house still needs cleaning. But you're not the same person anymore. That's where I lived for a long time, in that quiet space between who I was and who I was becoming. There's a strange kind of silence after you've been broken. Not peace, not yet. It's the silence of rebuilding. You sweep up the glass, stitch the wounds, learn how to breathe again. It's slow, lonely, humbling work. But it's holy work too, because that's where you meet yourself. I used to think love meant staying no matter what, that forgiveness was the highest form of devotion. But sometimes forgiveness is letting go, not to save them, but to save yourself. When I look back now, I don't see 27 wasted years. I see 27 years of training, of becoming the woman who could rise from the ashes without needing applause. I learned that survival is not shameful, that independence isn't bitterness, that healing isn't linear. It's messy, ugly, and beautiful all at once. Some nights I still wake up and hear echoes of the old life, the slammed doors, the whispered apologies, the silence that used to fill my chest. But now I smile, because those ghosts don't scare me anymore. They remind me where I came from. People ask me if I'd ever take him back. I say, I did once, in my prayers. Not because I wanted him again, but because I wanted peace. Anger is a heavy suitcase, and I was tired of carrying it. I forgave him the way you forgive a storm. You don't excuse the destruction, but you accept that it happened. And then you rebuild smarter. If you'd told me years ago that I'd own a business, rebuild my family, find love again, and sleep peacefully at night, I would have laughed. I didn't think women like me got happy endings, but maybe that's because I was still waiting for someone else to write it for me. Now I know. You don't wait for happy endings. You build them. One scar, one truth, one brave decision at a time. Sometimes customers come into my bakery and recognize me from the news. They whisper, "You're that woman who stood up to her husband." I smile and tell them, "No, I'm the woman who stood up for herself." And maybe that's all healing really is, standing up for yourself, even when your legs are shaking. If you're listening to me right now, maybe you're where I once was, sitting in a dark room, wondering how it all fell apart. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you think you'll never feel whole again. But you will. One day, the silence won't hurt. The mirror won't lie. The world won't feel heavy anymore. And you'll wake up, look in that mirror, and see her, the woman who survived. Don't rush it. Don't chase closure. Just take one breath at a time. Because survival isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning. And if nobody's told you yet, you deserve better. You deserve peace. You deserve to love again, even if the first person you love is yourself. My name is Denise. I am not a victim. I am not a failure. I am not what he left behind. I am what survived.